Hello, and welcome to Keep the Channel Open. My name is Mike Sakasagawa, and this is episode 8. This week I'm talking with painter Bryan Ida, who is one of my favorite contemporary painters, if not possibly the favorite. So we'll hear more about that in just a minute. Before we get started with that, though, I just wanted to take a minute and reflect on some stuff that's been going on with me. Sadly, this past week, I had to attend a funeral for a friend of mine. And this guy, what can I say about him? Back when I was getting started in photography, when I was first starting out, really just sort of getting to know how to use my camera, I didn't know anything at the time. And I had joined this camera club here in San Diego, the San Diego DSLR Club. And really, my entry into that group came from this guy. His name was Andy. And he brought me into that group and really encouraged me. And, when I think about him, I always remember this one time. It was on one of the group shoots that we'd gone out of. We'd gone out on this photo walk at one of the local Spanish missions here in San Diego, and I remember I was out along a walkway, and I had knelt down to take a picture of some ants that I had seen crawling along a chain that was next to the walkway. And I had knelt down, I was taking my picture, sort of tuned out to the world. I looked up, and I saw Andy sort of grinning at me, smiling at me, and he kind of gave me a little knowing little nod, and we both sort of walked on, kept on taking pictures. And then a few days later, after I had uploaded my pictures into the group folder on their website, the club website, a couple of days after that, I ran into Andy again. He was at my office. He was one of the guys that we used for IT at the time. Anyway, he stopped me in the hall, and he said, "Hey, I saw that picture, that ant, and man, you got a good eye." And when I think back on it, he was really one of the first people, other than maybe my parents or my wife, who ever really encouraged me as a photographer. And I don't know if I can say that he's the reason why I am where I am now, but he certainly gave me a good push along at the beginning. And sadly, he was not too old when he died. I think he was 57. Died suddenly of a heart attack. And thinking about him, it just gets me to thinking about how short a time we have, how unexpectedly these things can happen. We don't, any of us, know how long we get on this earth, and I think that is one of the reasons why I'm so motivated to make as much work as I can and to really do all the things artistically that I want to do, and to do them right now, because you never know what's going to happen. And I guess that might be kind of a morbid topic to take on, but I'm trying to not see it in that way. What I'm trying to see this as, even though I miss my friend and I am sad about that, I'm trying to take this as a reminder and as a way of just a motivation to continue and to know that I need to make sure that I spend my time well and that I spend it on things that are important. And I think that is something that can get away from us a lot of times. So, what I'd like for you all listeners to do is, just think about what it is. Maybe it's a small thing, maybe it's a big thing. The thing that you maybe have been putting off. Think about what it might take for you to do that thing, or at least to get a start on it. Because, even if you try and fail, at least you'll have given it a shot. I know that Andy was a guy that lived life well, and that he spent a lot of time taking pictures and doing things that made him happy. And that, I think, is a lesson that we can all learn from. So, on to today's show. As I mentioned, today's guest is Bryan Ida, and Bryan is a guy I've known for a long time, and I've gotten to see his work develop over the course of really as long as I can remember, and that is because Bryan and I are related. Bryan is one of my dad's first cousins, and so I've known him for my entire life, and that has given me the opportunity that I think that is kind of a unique opportunity to get to see someone's artistic beginnings and how they can develop over a long period of time. And where Bryan is now is just miles different from what I knew him as a kid. And we talked about that in the conversation. Anyway, where he is now is he's really, as I said, one of my favorite living painters. And one of the things that I think really resonates with me about his work is how much he's using abstraction as a way of accessing memories and accessing emotions through his work. I was just looking at one of his artist statements from a couple of years ago, and in that he says, "In my latest series, I have been exploring the idea of experience and memory, its relationship to our feeling of identity, and trying to expose the images that emerge from this thought process. I am inspired by my travels in and around the Southern California area, with its freeways, buildings, oceans, and waterways, and its infinite variety of human experience that reflects its fusion of ethnicities. As I travel these areas, I know my memory will only retain a limited number of impressions and perceptions, and most will be lost to the continual flow of time. I try to express this loss by developing a technique of burying fragmented layers of paint inside layers of epoxy. By essentially isolating each layer from one another, there is a physical separation that gives a sense of depth, volume, and detachment that could be representative of urban city life. These layers might also symbolize what we retain in our memories, or they might represent the passage of time from an archaeological point of view, as the history of a city is buried under the present day." And that, you know, if you know anything about my work, if you know anything about the kinds of stuff that really rings my bell, those themes are something that I can relate to really deeply. And these are things that I even explore in my own work. One of the great pleasures in getting to sit down with him was getting to see some of his recent work in person. Even though we are family, most of my experience of his more recent work has only been online. And getting to see it in person, getting to visit his studio and see how he works and where he works and see some works in progress, it was just amazing. And his work definitely takes on another dimension when you see it in person. In any case, I will put a link in the show notes to his website, and he's got a bunch of images of his paintings on his website, as well as several of his artist statements over the years, and I highly encourage you to check these out because his work is fantastic. And without further ado, here's my conversation with Bryan Ida. So thank you, by the way, for...
Oh, thanks for coming up.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time. I've been telling everybody that, and this is true, you're probably my favorite contemporary painter.
Oh, thanks.
Like, out of anybody I can think of who's living, like your work is something that just, it makes sense to me in a way that other painters, painting is for me as a photographer, is something, because I never went to art school and I don't have a strong background in that kind of thing. I find painting to be a lot of times a little difficult for me to get my arms around. And I feel like,
as far as abstraction or representation?
It's not even that. It's like one of the things that always kind of I have trouble with is there's this whole middle range of work where like if something is obviously complete shit, then like that's obvious to me. And when something is obviously amazing, that's obvious to me too.
Is it like the concept behind it, or is it the fact of conceptual art, or just the simplicity of some of the techniques? Or
I think what it is that I don't have a strong enough background in art history to sometimes get a lot of the references.
Okay.
And
yeah, I don't have a strong art history. I didn't go to art school. I went to music school.
Yeah, that's true. I actually wanted to talk to you about that, like, because I always remember when I was a kid, and at family things.
Yeah.
I remember. I was just talking to my grandma about this when we were up for Thanksgiving. About we were talking about you, and she's got a couple of your really old early paintings that are nothing like what you do now.
Yeah.
But we were talking, and I think she had like a book or something of yours. Did you do
Yeah.
that? Yeah. And she was showing me that, and we were talking about how great your stuff is. And then we were talking about that music video that you made.
Yeah.
Way back in like the 80s.
The 80s.
Like 88 maybe, something like that.
Yeah.
And how like I don't think any of us would have thought back then, like how where any of us end up, where we end up going.
Yeah, the paths, our paths.
Because I always remembered you that way when I was a little kid, remembering you as a musician. That was
a musician.
Main thing.
Yeah.
And you were cool, and you had the long 80s hair. And
super long hair. Yeah, I kind of always knew what I wanted to do.
Uh-huh.
I was lucky. I mean, in high school, I grew up playing music, and I knew what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's really lucky to have that. I mean, it changed from oral to visual, but I always knew what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so I studied electronic music composition in college, and then built a studio, built a whole recording studio.
Mm-hmm.
Recorded a bunch and worked in studios, and then I started working for Sam Francis. Do you know who Sam Francis is?
No.
He's like an abstract expressionist, color like Jackson Pollock, but with super bright, vibrant primary colors.
Mm.
And that's what those early paintings were. Because I was actually I was working for him, and then he got really sick, and so he moved me down to L.A. and I moved into his studio, which was like 20,000 square foot, fully equipped Sam Francis studio, like gallons of paints and paper and canvases, anything. So he stopped painting in that studio, and I was living in it, and he allowed me to work, and I was working for him as a studio assistant, so we would always talk about like music and painting and how it's the same expression but just with different senses. And he did a lot of stuff with Pink Floyd and light shows for music. So he was really into music and how the correlations work and how it's really the same humanistic expression. So he allowed me to work in the studio, and I started painting down here. And I had in music school I had taken art classes, just drawing classes and stuff. So I was always interested in it, but I was never like, going to pursue it at all. Mm-hmm. And he allowed me to full access to his studio to paint.
Wow.
Yeah, 20,000 square foot with anything and everything you could possibly imagine. So that was an incredible gift. So I took that, and I took that at kind of, I knew for some reason when I started painting, it really clicked. Like I could just get things out and get to places pretty quickly. And with music, I had to work really hard. Mm-hmm. Music was always really hard work. I mean, I did it since I was a kid, so I don't really. I mean, I always worked hard, but it was when the visual thing, when I was given the opportunity to work in the visual, it was like it just clicked, and it kind of worked from there. Like the first show I did sold a lot. I did really well, so it was very encouraging. So it's just the way it started is pretty unique. So I basically started painting in his style, obviously, because I knew how to work. He was working with how he worked with water and acrylics and how they flow into water, and so I knew a lot of that technique just watching him work. work and understanding how the paint flows, and we were mixing paints to do certain things that he wanted to do. So I kind of knew how to work that paint in that technique. So I definitely started with that technique, but that quickly I knew I didn't want to have anything to do with what he was doing. So I quickly moved on and started trying to do kind of my own thing.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time to figure out yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, like I said, I sold pretty well the first show from doing that.
Wow.
And so I've been doing it ever since.
Yeah.
But it takes a long time to figure yourself out. I mean, it's been 25 years, and it just took me 20 years to really get confident and be able to.
Yeah. The stuff that like my grandma has at her house.
That's super early.
It's really early.
Yeah, that's San Francisco style.
Yeah, and it's definitely, I mean, it is nothing at all. I remember like a few months ago you were last year sometime, you were showing some older stuff, not that old, but on Facebook you had showed a few of your older things, and where you could really see the development into the City series. Yeah. And actually you can kind of see the development into the new these Waves ones as well. Some of the forms that you have there, with the way that the sort of curving forms in linear forms there. Absolutely. But those really early ones are just nothing like it, like these ones now. And it's like you can kind of see, like now you can see where you are now, how there must have been a real progression into, like, even there must have been like a break somewhere where you made like a conscious choice to steer away from that initial style and move into something more like what you're doing now. I mean, is that
always I was steering away from that.
Yeah.
I knew I didn't want to do it. I just needed to learn the technique and get that under my hand and develop tools, painting tools. And I definitely wanted to develop my own palette. So I use a lot of tones and grays and whites, and I just change the color a lot. And I mix color on the panel. So I'll do base coats and then put a lot of not glazes, but even just overcoats. And so I build color in a much different way.
Yeah. And I mean, where you've ended up is something. It's not like anybody else I can think of. You know?
It's pretty unique.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the style of abstraction that you use, where you're working with so many layers, and there's so much about things hidden coming forward, but then also, especially with the City series, where you have so many like bold geometric figures. It's not. I feel like a lot of times when I see people working with geometric forms, certainly in photography, but even painting, it's not really abstraction as much as non-representational. But with yours, there's still like a tie to the
location.
Sure.
Location.
Yeah.
I like to. They're kind of memories and archaeological. Like I like to just have very glimpses of areas and then put them together without specific reference to any kind of specific architecture in the area, and just have like a reference to it and build like emotion with color. Like you can tone it. You can have a darkness and contrasting with a light, or how grays put next to reds turn kind of green as complementaries. So a lot of playing with color to create atmosphere and mood and emotion.
Yeah.
And like burying, like, yes. What's keep going. I got lost there.
Yeah. No. But like, one of the things that the thing that immediately strikes you, like when you're looking at the City series, that what jumps out, the first thing you notice are the geometric figures, which are really foregrounded, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that to me is so seductive about it are the backgrounds.
Yeah.
And particularly the ones that they don't all do this, I don't think, but like particularly the ones where it's very suggestive of the ocean, of the horizon.
Yeah, horizon line.
That I just find myself getting lost in the backgrounds.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not, especially as a photographer, that's not necessarily something obvious, like an obvious way of engaging with an image. You know, it's really interesting to me.
Yeah, the backgrounds. There's I try and sometimes eliminate the midground, so it's like foreground, background, and then the backgrounds are super blurry, and the foregrounds are super hard edged. So to get that contrast as well as the color contrast, and so you get these disillusions and they need resolution, but maybe you might not resolve it here, and then you might resolve it there. So there's always, it's like the paintings always has a mystery when you look at it. So it's something that you can look at and contemplate. I like to have a painting that I want. If I want a painting on my wall, I want to be able to look at it for the rest of my life and always see something new in it, and see something fresh, some sort of relationship. It's like, oh my God, that's so cool. So I always try and keep the first of the series that worked, because those inspirational moments are like, you can kind of feed off that for the rest for me for the rest of my life, because I know the paintings, what they did in that moment, and when they first being created, the first of the series, because I have like maybe 4 or 5 of those pieces where it's like I kept the first ones, and like there's one actually right there where you just it's so different from what happened before, and you have no idea where it came from.
Yeah.
But then you have this base for this whole new series that you can work, maybe 4 or 5 years on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And really work into the series,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when we were talking just a minute ago, before we started, that you were saying like right now you're sort of in a period where things are maybe transitioning a little bit.
Yeah.
And I mean that's an exciting place to be, right? That's like, because I feel like, at least with me, when I'm like, there's sort of 2 phases of a project or whatever, where there's the period where I already kind of know what it is that I'm doing, and I'm just like going along that road.
Yeah.
And that is fun. There's a fun aspect to that, because you're seeing
you have a little bit of clarity.
Yeah, you have a little more clarity.
A little bit of clarity.
And you have this sense of motion, right? Like that, like I'm getting somewhere now.
Yeah, but there's still that rough edge where it's like, where the series can go off track.
Yeah.
which is great too, because mistakes are fucking great.
Yeah, yeah. But then there's the part that comes before that, where like maybe you're finished with, or you're starting to get tired of working on the thing you've been working on.
Yeah.
And like that's kind of where I've got a project now. That's always how I can tell where I'm like, I think I'm done shooting now, and I got to figure out what to do with this, because I'm getting tired of shooting this. And it'll be so. But then you're in this space where you're like, well, now what the hell am I going to do?
Yeah.
But then when you're feeling like sometimes it'll be like just completely fallow, where you're not really doing anything, or sometimes it might be experimenting and trying to just play around with stuff.
Yeah.
And that period of experimentation or marinating or whatever, that when you finally have that moment where something is starting to click, that's really exciting too.
It's the best.
Yeah.
That's what you kind of paint for.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, I know what I'm doing. But then that doesn't last very long usually. You always go, oh, fuck, another problem. You get problems, which is great. It's like you create a solution, and the solution creates another problem.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's what you want.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's the same painting over and over and over.
Yeah.
You want to be able to push through. But like, you can work, for me, I work probably series maybe 4 or 5 years, and then something happens where it's like, you just run out of ideas in it. I still have ideas in the cities. I've changed the technique. I was using epoxy and using 5 layers of epoxy and layering paint in the epoxy, so there's like physical depth and painting depth, and all the perspectives and changing perspectives and changing light sources and stuff like that. So there's still a lot I can do in that, but I changed my technique to using this crazy polyurethane, so it's now 200 coats, so it takes forever, but it's the surface is not perfect. It's very imperfect, but still built up. It's kind of like Japanese lacquer, where it just built up, and kind of erased the marks, but they're still there. So, and there's so many options when you have 200 layers. You have so many things you can put in. You can just, you can glaze really light glazed layers and affect the mood and the tone of areas or the whole thing. You can push things back. You can pull things forward using like lighter highlights, bring them over the top after like the 190th layer can be a layer of white ink or something like that. There's just options, and it's just the way that I paint, using these layers and isolating layers and locking things in and pushing them back, like literally burying them 200 layers back. It's just there's the options for the front when you're working through the front to the front of the layers. It's like unlimited. So I spent the last year developing the new technique with the 200 layers of poly, because you're not supposed to. It's hard to get it to cure when it's that thick. So you have to do certain things and work with certain things. So options are really wide open, but it's like thematically, I still want to do cities, but it has to be something different. It has to be. I've had. The last 2 years have been pretty crazy with show scheduling, so I've had to produce work and not be able to make a mistake. And now I'm in an area where I don't have anything scheduled. I've been pushing shows back so I can have time to really make mistakes and really throw stuff away and just it's great, but it's like you get like I just bustled through like 3 days of just working, and then you reach a level. It's like, oh fuck. It's completely wrong. I don't know what to do now. Yeah, so that's like this painting is like. I'm looking at it going, I don't even know what to do. I'm just going to probably erase it or throw it away and just start over.
It seems like, when you're working, I remember a couple years ago I was talking, when you were still doing the epoxy stuff.
Yeah.
When we were talking about that, and now you have, at the time I remember even thinking this, but then that you're only talking about like a few layers.
Yeah.
And now you're talking about hundreds of layers. And locking stuff in, where like once something is 50 layers down, that's there. Like there's nothing you can do about it. And it seems to me like one of the things that would be both exciting but also kind of terrifying about working in a technique that way is that it doesn't seem like there's any way you could really completely plan. Like you couldn't conceive of it completely ahead of time, right?
Oh yeah, no.
Like the whole thing would be a process of discovery as you're going.
That's the greatest part about it.
Yeah.
I have premeditation, like on maybe the palette and kind of what I hopefully want to do with it, but it never turns out that way. It's great. It's great. It's like that's the best part about painting. It's like every day you come in, you're just challenged, and it's funny. I like to like do a move and then leave. I could leave for like 2 seconds and almost completely forget the piece because I have a really bad short-term memory. Not that bad, not 2 seconds bad, but I'll just come back in and the first glance when you look out of the corner of the eye and you look at it and you get your reaction. That's the reaction you want. It's like, oh, that's in the right place. That's the right color. That's the right whatever. Or that's so completely wrong. Can you get back to where you were before you did that, or are you going to have to just live with that and then react to that and kind of not fix it, but that's what you're working with.
Right. You have to incorporate that somehow.
You have to incorporate because it's
in there.
It
wasn't on purpose.
Yeah. Because now I can't erase. Like with the epoxy, I could sand it back and take a move back. I can't do that anymore.
Right.
Because it's too thin.
Even that though, I remember the word that we were using when we were talking about it then was just like, that's a really ballsy way of working,
Yeah, I like it. That's what I like. It's
like
brave. I like yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I the other thing too, with painting, I always say to people that I'm always impressed when people can do stuff that I can't do. Like anything I can do, I'm like, well, I can do that. That's not that big a deal. But then like when I see people doing stuff that I just like, how do you do that? That's always more impressive to me. And when it comes to painting, the thing that I always have the most trouble with when it comes to images, like to making work, is that my work is always very observational, right? Like when it comes to photography, you've got like and I guess this is true with painting too, like you could be painting from life or you could just be painting from an idea. And with photography, like you could either construct an image, whether you do it in a studio or in Photoshop or whatever, or you can just see something and grab it kind of thing. And my work is more the latter always. And knowing how to like that's with anything I do, whether it's photography or writing or anything, like it's my process is always so much more observational than constructional, and
do you capture moments or do you
sometimes I get stuff on the fly. More often it'll be like
you'll contemplate a scene and then shoot it.
Yeah, it'll be like I'll notice something and I'll have time, because a lot of the things I do aren't necessarily have people in them, so you've got a little time to sort of figure out how to work the scene a little bit. But there's never.
Do you look at light or do you look at object?
It's both.
Yeah.
Because with photography, the light is what makes it is what makes the image, like literally what makes the image.
Yeah.
But the object and is what provides the context for the theme. And at least like it doesn't have to be that way because I know a lot of other photographers who do stuff that's a lot less. I mean, that's really doing stuff that's even non-representational. But for what I do, because the themes I'm working with are what they are, it really kind of needs that tie to the subject. The subject needs to reflect that. And the difficulty with photography as opposed to painting is that you got to work with what's in front of you. You can't nowadays with Photoshop you can, but still,
like I changed my light source and my perspective on each block I put in, which is like you can do in Photoshop now, but like I can just do that.
Yeah. But just even having the approach where you can. Like I remember I was seeing, this was a while ago too, you posted, you went to Palm Springs or something and you were just walking around neighborhoods and you had some snapshots of like just different houses and stuff.
Yeah.
And then you had those snapshots and then you must have been showing this a lot later because then you were showing some of the paintings that kind of were inspired by that. And like you look at the one, you look at the other, and there's not any kind of
direct reference.
Right. It's not referential. But there's you can see how the one inspires the next.
Yeah. A lot of that's palette, I think.
Yeah. But I mean, just even knowing how to start with, like, that's the thing with the painting. Like, I wouldn't even know where to start. Like with me, I always have to see the thing first, and then I think, oh, I know how to make a picture out of that.
You know how to get there.
Right.
Yeah.
But I have to see it first.
Yeah.
You
can do that with painting.
I guess
you can have premeditation for sure. I mean, a lot of painters have premeditation. I do kind of. I try, but it's like it doesn't work. That's kind of the way I work. Everyone does it different.
Yeah, and then I guess too, what you're saying in some ways, the thing that you said about, reacting, mid work.
Yeah.
Reacting to what's already there.
It could go a completely different direction. Like that happens a lot for me. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Improvisation. It's
Yeah.
musical, right?
That's true.
And like for me, the difference one of the big differences between painting and music is like, because a lot of people say my paintings are pretty musical, how the composition and how there's gaps and silences and spaces, and you can contemplate a painting, and the time that you spent contemplating it is the viewers, and in music, your contemplation of the piece is at the whim of the musician. So the time that you spend with the piece is the time control is for the viewer or the listener is totally different. And I love that about painting, is that you can spend a lifetime with a painting, you know, or as long as you want. Like if you're done with a painting after 10 years and you switch it out or get a new one, you know, you've done your work with the painting as far as a collector or a viewer.
Yeah. I mean, it's I think though, you know, one of the things, you know, with painting and music, or like any visual art and music, is that you know, because visual art typically is pretty static, that it allows you to spend time with it more. Yeah, you know. Also,
that's the best.
Yeah.
When you wake up with it and the light's different on it, and there's nothing better.
Yeah.
That's why everyone has to have a painting. I mean, you have to have a painting or photography or something that's done by the hand and with intent behind it, you know.
Yeah. That's another thing that I always have trouble with art, is doing stuff with my hands, because I'm not very. My fingers are not very dexterous, you know. So it's
make your weakness your strength. That's what I always try and do. I mean, you always try and do that.
Yeah. It's rough. I think it's really interesting to hear you talking about, you know, music and painting, how they're similar. I think, because I don't think many people would think of that, you know, or at least not. Maybe people who are used to thinking about art might think about that kind of stuff. But I think, like, just generally, you know, a guy on the street.
Well, you think about where it comes from and what it expresses. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Human condition.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's. I mean, they're each expressive.
Yeah. And that's what any art form wants, is you want to get an emotion out of something. You want to have the emotion. So, and they all create emotion somehow. Whatever it is.
Yeah. I feel like music. A lot of times music can be more immediate.
Oh yeah.
In how it accesses those emotions.
For sure. I can't even listen to music.
Yeah.
I can't even listen to it when I'm working, because I listen to it, and I have, you know, because when you're trained to, you hear progressions, you want it to go a certain area, or or rhythms that are working. You like get this interesting polyrhythm or whatever's happening, and then you go, like, I'm listening to it. I can't. It took me away from the painting.
Yeah.
I can't even do it.
Yeah.
I have to listen to like narratives now. Like I listen to the podcasts and books on tape. I need to have, because I can tune that out. I can't.
Oh, interesting.
I can't tune music out. I have to, like, you know, you're like.
Wow.
I used to study like Yoruba. Is these storytellers that would travel around the country and tell the stories, the history of the culture. And they have these incredible polyrhythms, these drums that are polyrhythms. They're so complex. I used to study those things and break them down, and it was so cool. Just these crazy time signatures that are crossing and stuff like that. And I listened to it the other day. I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. But I put it on. I just found some music on the computer, and I put it on. I was like, oh man, I was just listening to that. You know, couldn't paint.
Yeah.
So I can't do it.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I have a lot more trouble concentrating when there's speech, you know.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you listen to it.
Yeah, I get really hooked into narratives. Yeah. I mean, you know, hearing it's interesting too. Like when you're talking about, you know, rhythms and stuff too. Like a lot, that is something about your work is very rhythmic.
Yeah, it's rhythmic. It's in there naturally. It's just, that's what you want. You want your subconscious to come in.
Yeah.
And that's what Sam Francis used to talk about a lot, is subconscious, and how you access that, and how you express it. How does it come out?
Yeah. Yeah. Completely lost my train of thought, but fortunately I can just cut this little bit in the app.
Edit. Thank God. What do you use? Do you use Pro Tools to edit?
I just use GarageBand.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
it's powerful, right?
Yeah, it's enough. It's enough for what I want to do.
Yeah, can you do compression and stuff like that with it?
Yeah, you can.
That's good.
I don't do a lot of that, mostly just because I don't know anything about audio engineering.
Yeah, compression is like hardness, softness. So you want to have compression is the attack comes on slower. So it's like if you're looking at a sound wave volume, if it goes above a certain threshold, it'll come on slowly, and then a limiting will just stop it like that.
Yeah.
So sometimes you want limiting if you're at the threshold of your distortion. Sometimes you want a softening compression where it comes on slow and just kind of brings it back down, so you can't hear it. It's very inaudible.
Yeah.
They call it softening.
Yeah. Yeah, I did a little bit. The only kind of training I ever had in anything was in college. I took a multimedia course, and we used to do. It's basically like fancy slideshows.
Oh yeah, with like what's that? What's that thing where you present slides?
Oh, it's like PowerPoint.
PowerPoint.
But yeah, except back then you actually had to have like 9 projectors. Because we were using like slide projectors.
Actual slides, okay.
Yeah, and they were all hooked up to a computer, and so I did a little bit of audio stuff back then, but that's an interesting way to work, actually, just because it's real different from what I do now. But thinking about how how images work together, and then that sort of like in between. It's not quite stills, but it's also not quite motion.
Yeah.
Like you can suggest motion, but it's not. It's interesting.
It is interesting. Plus, it's projected instead of reflective.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a.
Yeah. I keep thinking I want to get back to that, but so far, like, it's just like anything. Juliet's always telling me, like, you got so many ideas. Maybe you should just stick with one for a little while.
Yeah, you always want to be laser focused. Yeah. The better, more laser focused, the more you're going to get done. And that's in it, and just be satisfied with being good at one thing and not having to do crazy amounts. I don't do music. I can't touch it. I can't even listen to it.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to fucking deal with it.
Yeah.
I just want to paint.
Yeah.
I don't want to do sculpture. I just want to paint.
Yeah.
I want to work with the palette.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that other shit.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of stuff that's like, I got some ideas for some sculptures. I'm not going to do that shit. It's too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe.
I'm always a lot more of a dilettante, like I get interested in one thing and then I'll do that for a little while and then I'm like, I'm going to do something else now.
Yeah. The thing is to maintain it within that focus, like have those little offshoots. You want those offshoots, but you want it to be within the realm of your overall arching expression. Yeah.
It's tough too. Like, it's like what you're saying. Sort of, figuring out your voice, coming to your voice. That is something that can take a long time.
Oh yeah. Like I said, I was lucky. I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to do music, then I wanted to paint. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's only 2 things I've ever wanted to do in my life.
Yeah. But then, even within the painting,
there's tons of stuff within the painting. Like there's portraits. I've been actually doing some portraits lately. I haven't done portraits in 15 years.
Wow.
But I just want to do it. I'm not going to show them. I'm not going to show anybody. Mm-hmm. But I just want to do them.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess, it's good too because, like, you never really know how this stuff is going to cross-pollinate.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm leaving brushstrokes and I'm just totally doing something totally different. It's just like liberating. It's fucking great. Like I said, I'm not going to show them.
Yeah. But even though it still helps feed you.
Yeah, for sure. You just got to do it. You got to do whatever within your, like I said, within the realm of your focus. You got to do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Whether it's working with film for you or working in film, or it's all within the same overall concept of what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For me, it's painting, so it's like everything focuses on that. But I love the offshoots.
Yeah.
And I have stuff that, I love to fish. I just got a bow and arrow.
Wow.
Start shooting doing some archery. So I just love stuff that takes my mind completely 100% away from it. When I'm fishing, it's just nothing else matters. I'm just fishing.
Yeah, seems like that's interesting because like I was just talking to so this would have been when this airs, it'll have been the episode that airs previous. But I was just talking to an author, and he actually started as a musician as well, as a classical violist, and I was saying, what do you think those are? How those might interact with each other? And he was saying the main thing that the viola taught him was how to be in a room by himself and just practice and work.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about like fishing and archery, those are two things that like can require a lot of focus. Like when you're doing archery, like you are like super duper focused on.
You don't think about that stupid painting waiting for you at the studio.
Yeah, yeah. But like, you know, it's just like then it's a different expression of concentration too, right?
Yeah. Oh,
like
yeah.
when you're painting, like you're like honed in, right?
Yeah. Or usually.
Yeah.
A lot of times you're like, oh boy. No, but when you get going, it's just what hours go by, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah. So we should switch gears. We should for the second segment thing. You said you want to talk about community.
Yeah, I listened to one of your last podcasts. I know you talked about it, but I wanted to talk about community as well because I've been what we were just talking about is the singularity of working in your studio and being comfortable with yourself. I've always loved working in the studio. Like I built a music studio, and then I've always had a painting studio, my own studio. And the past maybe 5 years, I just felt the need to reach out, and LA has this super strong artist community. So I've just reached out and embraced it, and just worked hard to kind of join in and give. And the best part about a community is you give. Mm-hmm. And it's been really great. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then, like I said, the LA art scene right now is just full steam.
Yeah,
worldwide full steam.
Yeah,
so it's been really great, and just meeting everybody and working with people and to this exchange. Helped out with an exchange with Japanese artists. Did a bunch of shows in Japan, and then a bunch of the Japanese artists came over here, and I helped out hanging the shows and working with them. So it was really, really, really cool. They did 4 shows here last summer, and then there was 8 shows in Japan. And that was just, makes me want to reach kind of into my cultural roots, which I never had that much of an interest in.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing. Like when you talk about community, like there's the artistic community, like the community of your peers doing the thing you're doing, but like culture can be a community as well. I know. I know that's been a big thing for my grandma in Salinas.
Yeah.
Connecting with that, and like me too. Like I always kind of wonder what my life would have been like if I'd grown up in Salinas instead of leaving Salinas when I was young. Yeah. Because where I grew up, there were like no Asian people at all.
Palo Alto has a 0.
Yeah.
I didn't know any growing up.
Yeah, and it's like it's one of those things where like I never felt like I had a community in that way, Yeah. And I think a lot of the work that I do now, like my artistic work, is like the more I think about it, the more I realize like it's really rooted in. It really comes out of that thing where I never had a community when I was young, and so that I'm trying to find ways of connecting now through the work. But like, so I mean, is for you that thing where you're Asian, but you didn't have that in your life as much when you were young.
Yeah, your outlook's not that way at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that something people ask you about a lot? Like, I know, like, because you're a Japanese man working in California and in the U.S., right? But like do you ever feel like people pigeonhole you that way, or
maybe they do? I don't really notice it. I don't really. Like I said, I didn't really push out that much. I mean, I was in galleries and stuff, but I never really pushed out into the community and met other artists.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so at all, actually.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah. I never had anyone do any racist stuff to me at all, actually.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they have behind my back, but no one does it to my face.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had that.
Yeah. It's I don't know, all this stuff kind of, like, you never really know how it's going to come out in your work, like, when like, even if it's not literally about it, like, I don't know, and some of these things, like your family, how you grow up, these things, they all kind of come in there somehow.
Yeah. Subconscious.
Yeah. But okay, so like when you're talking about the community in LA, and like definitely is something that I feel like LA's art scene is really blown up a lot over the past couple decades.
Past
like
5 years has been a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you always used to hear people like.
It started with the Sunshine Noir. I think for me, it started with Sunshine Noir, that show that traveled in like 99 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They put together all the LA artists and then traveled around the world. That kind of was the start of everyone noticing LA, and then it's just been building from that. So it's been,
Yeah.
But the past 5 years, all the galleries are starting to move to downtown LA, and so it's been a lot of growth.
Yeah, I feel like people previously, like back in like the 80s and earlier, like it was really like New York is the place. It's the only place.
It still is.
And I mean, it is, but I feel like there's been more...
well, New York had the connection to Europe, and LA has a connection to Asia, so Asia's up and coming. It's going to be just reflective of almost geography.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's not an angle that ever occurred to me.
Yeah, so
That's
Paris is close to New York.
Yeah.
Paris is, 6-8 hours or something from New York?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Asia, from New York to Asia is a lot longer,
Yeah.
5 more hours.
Yeah.
So the geographic connection is there. And plus, Asia has typically immigrated to California.
Mm-hmm.
So it has that very strong base. So it's always had that, right?
Yeah. 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 That's so seeing...
It's almost parallel with the rise of Asia as an economic power.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
coming up, yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought about that, actually.
Yeah. People are definitely, though, I feel like taking the West Coast more seriously than they used to.
LA for sure right now.
Yeah.
LA's just going right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and comparing to, like, down in San Diego where I am, it's, I feel like people in San Diego are trying to get stuff started.
Yeah.
But it's everything is still real scrappy and real, like, real new, real raw. There's a community. It's one of the things actually that's kind of exciting for me living there now, is that there is a community emerging where there hasn't been before, but things are starting to gel more.
Yeah.
And you see people really trying to start, they're starting collectives, they're starting galleries, they're starting festivals, and things are starting to really become a thing, and that's an exciting thing to see starting.
Is that in the downtown area, or is it?
Yeah, like
especially
not in the Gaslamp, but like there's a couple different areas in Little Italy. There's which is just a little north of the Gaslamp district.
Okay.
Little Italy has a whole arts row kind of thing on Kettner Boulevard. And then also there's a neighborhood a little further south called Barrio Logan that has, historically been, not considered a real nice neighborhood. A lot of artists have moved into that area recently, and you're seeing a lot more like, they're almost like speakeasies, some of these galleries, like they don't have a sign and you have to go down an alley to get in.
That's cool. I like that.
But it's you're seeing more of this stuff pop up, and I'm thinking like, hopefully, maybe another 10 years or so, like we'll be able to have something down in San Diego that
it's his own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what you want. That it's something that's starts and it's its own thing.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, like probably like there's a big scene in Tijuana, so it's probably going to be tied to Mexico. That in Asia maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. It's definitely it's cool, and that definitely gets to like the kind of thing that you were just talking about with participating and reaching out. That for me, that's been really valuable. I try to get to one opening a month maybe. Has been my goal for this year, like because when I got kids and I got a full-time job and stuff, so it's hard for me to get out. But like I feel like if I can get out to one opening, one exhibition a month, and like in so many ways that's like really valuable to me, like that I get to, not only do I get to make connections and stuff and see people, but also just like there's a lot of really interesting work being made too.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, your art form is also in the form of this podcast where you get to go visit studios, talk to people. I mean, that's the best.
Yeah.
The best.
Yeah.
Studio visits. I love studio visits. I've been doing studio visits the past couple of years, and it's been great.
Yeah. It's amazing to see how, it's when I was starting this podcast, one of the things that I sort of was thinking about was the artistic impulse, and how people think of the different art forms as being really separate, whether it's writing or music or painting or photography or sculpture or whatever, right? Think of them as being real separate things. But my feeling was that I bet if I talk to people, that the motivations, the underlying impulse to express is very common, and that has certainly been true. But what I have also found is that even though like the impulse to create comes from a common place, and many of the same themes in the work might be common, but like the way that people actually do the work,
artists are freaks.
It's all over the place.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's amazing.
Like, where the hell did you pick that up?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fucking great, though.
Yeah, it's amazing. People are doing stuff that I just never would have thought of, you know? I just never would have imagined that anybody would do stuff like that, you know?
I love going in and just like, oh, God, I want one of those.
Yeah.
That's the best, right?
Yeah.
You go in and like, God, I'd love to have one of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd love to have that to look at for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's how I feel when I come in here with your stuff. I've always been, I've been saying to Juliet, we should save up. We should get one of Bryan's pieces. They're great. One of these days. Yeah, I mean, seeing how you work it's really inspiring.
8 hours a day, 7 days a week, unless I'm fishing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely do 8.
That's something that I always aspire to. I feel like you don't see. I feel like that in some ways that's almost like that conception of an artist as someone who can really like lock in and do work for like a job. 8 hours a day every day.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that many people that are able to do that.
Yeah, I've been doing it my whole life.
Just even like and maybe this is a function of the fact that like for me personally, I'm what do you call it, emerging still, and so a lot of my peers are also sort of in that thing. But like I don't know that many people who are able to not have a day job.
Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah.
It ain't easy.
Yeah.
It's definitely not easy. You're poor.
Yeah.
But you're working.
Yeah.
Doing what you want.
Yeah.
I mean, you had choices, right? I could have done engineering or something. I'm smart enough to do that stuff, but I didn't. Yeah.
I mean, you definitely it's interesting too. Like when like you always like in our family like you were always sort of the cool. Like you just stuck out so much compared to so many of the rest of us, like all being so straight-laced and so analytical. Like I'm not saying this is coming out wrong, like because I think like listening to you talk about your work, there's definitely an analytical mind there. But what I mean is like in our family, I feel like everybody that's just like you're be a good Japanese boy and get an office job and
Japanese American.
Yeah,
that's how that culture was.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
that's how my parents are from. The 50s. That's their how they think.
Mm-hmm.
So it's super conservative.
Yeah.
Go to college and become a doctor. But my brother was like super straight-laced. He did that whole path.
Mm-hmm.
Then my next brother was the complete rebel. So he broke my parents. Like literally just broke them. Just like, Harley guy, still hardcore.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, a lot of the youngest kids have a lot of freedoms.
Yeah.
The parents are just broken.
Yeah.
Not broken, but they know that you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
They just kind of want you to be happy.
Yeah.
So I kind of had that freedom.
Yeah.
We didn't grow up any kind of rich people at all, but
Yeah.
I was able to. If I was going to go to college, they would have paid. I did go to college for a while, but I didn't get a degree. I just took what I wanted to take. I just always knew what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
When you know what you want to do, you take school, you learn what you want, and you move on.
Yeah.
I didn't want to take English. I didn't want to take chemistry. I didn't want to take any of that stuff.
Yeah.
It was a waste of my time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just I always kind of marveled that, like, somebody, I don't know how I could forget about your brother being like being a wild guy, but like you guys, your parents. So like when I think about your dad, he was just such a quiet, he's
Conservative,
a quiet conservative guy. He was such a nice man.
Yeah.
And he made really great martinis.
Yes, he was the martini maker.
Yeah. But yeah, and even like when I talk to your mom now, and even she surprises me sometimes. Like I remember we were home. It must have been for Thanksgiving, because otherwise she wouldn't have been there. But I think my son had like his leg was bothering him or something, and she started doing Reiki on him, and I was like, Tisada, you what? This does not match my image of you.
Yeah, she's into it.
Yeah,
yeah.
So I don't know. I guess you never really know.
Yeah.
People.
Everyone has mysteries.
Yeah, people surprise you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, we've wandered pretty far afield from community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is our community, though.
That's true. Yeah,
Family
I guess
is definitely community.
That's your first community.
It's first community, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's I don't know. I always felt pretty lucky to have the kind of close family that I have, and
yeah,
everybody's real tight knit.
Yeah.
Where I can grow up and have a relationship with, like my dad's cousins, and and
have that support.
Yeah, it's not something that everybody gets, I guess.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's definitely, and it's interesting too, because you all have ultimately come from the same place, and yet people go off in every different direction.
Yeah, my family's really different.
Yeah,
everyone's really different.
Yeah, definitely. When I think of you and your brothers, you guys, it's couldn't be more different.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, we should probably wrap up, but I really appreciate
it was a pleasure
you taking the time.
Thanks for coming.
All right, so that was my conversation with Bryan Ida. It's funny how you can know somebody for your whole life, and but you still sit down with them and still find out new things, still grow, still learn. It's pretty amazing. Anyway, if you've got any thoughts about anything we talked about today, you can drop me a line, drop me an email, podcast@keepthechanneleopen.com. You can also find me in the show on Twitter @ChannelOpenPod, or on Facebook @KeepTheChannelOpen. If you like what we're doing here, you could subscribe on iTunes or via Stitcher. You could leave a review or a rating on either of those places. That really helps the show out. Our theme music is by Poddington Bear. You can find more of his music available for licensing at soundofpicture.com. Next week, our guest will be San Diego artist TML Dunn, so you can look forward to that. That was a good talk. And until then, remember, keep the channel open.